Imagine a world holding its breath. It is dawn on a crisp October morning in 2025. The skies above the Persian Gulf shimmer with the first light, but beneath the waves, something stirs not of nature's design. A shadow fleet, unseen, unstoppable, descends upon the beating heart of global energy. Submersible drones, engineered in secret labs from Beijing to Brasilia, swarm the undersea pipelines and rigs like locusts upon a golden field. They do not explode, they devour. Nanite swarms, born of forbidden quantum tech, dissolve steel and polymer in hours, rendering the arteries of oil and gas into ghostly voids. By midday, the feeds crackle alive. Saudi Aramco's Ghawar field, the colossus that pumped 3.8 million barrels daily, 5% of world supply, goes dark. Qatar's LNG terminals, feeding 77 million tons yearly to Asia's furnaces, belch silence. The Strait of Hormuz, through which 21 million barrels flowed daily in 2024, becomes a tomb. Not a shot fired, not a war declared. Just absence. This is no mere sabotage, it is erasure. The perpetrators, a shadowy consortium calling itself the Eternal Green Accord, a cabal of rogue states and eco-militants wielding tech smuggled from black market fusion prototypes. Their manifesto floods the nets. The carbon debt ends now. But economics cares not for manifestos, it hungers for supply. World crude prices, hovering at $75 per barrel pre-dawn per Brent benchmarks, spiked to $150 by noon as algorithmic traders panic sell futures. OPEC's emergency summit convenes virtually, but their 40% share of global exports, 28 million barrels daily from memory of 2024 EIA data, means nothing when the wells are spectral. Stock markets. The Dow plunges 8% in the first hour, echoing the 12% drop on 9/11 when oil briefly touched $30 amid fear. But this is worse. No recovery in sight. Airports grind to halt as jet fuel, kerosene distilled from the same black blood, evaporates from tanks. Heathrow, JFK, Dubai International. 20% of global aviation fuel derived from 7% of oil production starves first. Trucks idle on interstates. Diesel, 30% of U.S. oil demand per DOE stats, fuels 70% of freight tonnage. Factories stutter. Petrochemicals underpin plastics, fertilizers, tires. The domino tilts. Chapter 2. The first ripple, the 24-hour reckoning. Night falls and the world tallies its graves. Strategic reserves activate. America's SPR releases 4.6 million barrels daily at peak, as in 2022's Ukraine shock, but that's a bandage on a severed limb. Global stocks, a mere 90 days at normal rates per IEA 2024 inventories, now halved by hoarding. Panic buying erupts. Supermarkets in Los Angeles and Lahore empty shelves. Truckers burning last diesel drops, jackknife on highways. Prices. Gasoline surges 200% overnight, $1.15/gallon in the U.S., mirroring Venezuela's 2019 hyper-blackouts when fuel queues stretched kilometers. Inflation ticks up 2% in expectation, as Fed models from 2022 post-Ukraine recall. Power grids flicker. Oil-fired plants, 4% of U.S. capacity but critical peakers, brown out cities. Refineries, 100 million barrels daily global throughput, idle without crude feedstock, echoing 1973 embargo losses of 7% GDP in affected nations. Airlines ground 80% of fleets. Boeing 737s, guzzling 5,000 liters hour, become museum pieces. Currencies wobble. The petrodollar, Saudi riyal pegged 3.1 to USD since 1986, fractures as Riyadh's $700 billion sovereign fund bleeds 15%. Rubles tank 30%. Russia's 40% export reliance per 2024 Rostat data exposed. China's yuan holds via coal stockpiles, 1.2 billion tons ready, as 2023 customs logs show, but factories idle, shaving 0.5% off their 5% growth trajectory overnight. Leaders speak. Biden's successor declares emergency. EU's von der Leyen invokes Article 122 solidarity, but words are wind. By midnight UTC, 1.2 billion barrels, equivalent to 2 weeks' supply, vanish from ledgers. The ripple becomes a wave. Chapter 3. The system shock the first month. Week 1. Chaos reigns. Global GDP contracts 1.5% annualized, per IMF models adapted from 2022's 2.1% energy shock. Trucking halts 60% of U.S. freight. Data shows diesel's 95% dominance, emptying 40% of grocery stocks. Famine whispers in breadlines from Berlin to Bakar. Pakistan's 25 million tons annual fertilizer imports, 80% oil-derived urea per 2024 USDA, wither fields. Air travel, dead. IATA's 4.5 billion passengers yearly grounded. Tourism GDP, $10 trillion pre-2025, evaporates 70%. Stockpiled jet fuel, 60 days for majors like Delta, depletes as rationing fails. Energy pivot fails spectacularly. Coal surges. Global 8 billion tons year capacity ramps 20%, as China's 4,200 TWh coal-fired output in 2024 absorbs load. But transport. Coal trains prioritize, stranding oil's siblings. Nuclear idles for lack of diesel pumps. 440 reactors worldwide needed for backups. Inflation roars to 12% globally, Weimar-like. Central banks print. Fed's balance sheet swells $2 trillion, as in 2020 COVID binge, diluting USD 8%. Riots bloom. France's yellow vests redux, but nationwide. Nigeria's fuel subsidy wars kill thousands, echoing 2012's 200 deaths amid 400% price hikes. Week 2, militaries mobilize. U.S. Fifth Fleet patrols ghost seas. Russia's Black Sea Fleet rusts without bunker fuel. Navies burn 200,000 barrels daily peacetime per CSIS. Wars pause. Missiles need trucking. Supply chains snap. Semiconductors. Taiwan's TSMC, reliant on petrochemical photoresists, halt 50% output, crashing electronics 30%. Autos. Tesla's batteries shine, but Ford's line seize without plastics. Global car production, 90 million units 2024, craters 80%. Week 3, black markets thrive. Bootleg biofuels from corn, US 15 billion gallons ethanol capacity, fetch $20 liter, inflating food 50% as corn diverts from plates. Europe rations. Germany's 2022 gas crisis redux, but oil's ubiquity multiplies pain threefold. Week 4, GDP down 5%. Unemployment spikes 10%. Oil sector's 10 million direct jobs plus 50 million indirect per IEA. Governments nationalize remnants, Venezuela style but global. The shock solidifies. Fossil fuels were 80% of energy, 30% of trade gone. Chapter 4. The fractured realignment the first year. Month 6. Adaptation clause from rubble. Global GDP shrinks 15%, rivaling 2008's 4% but compressed. Electricity rationed, coal and gas remnants power grids at 70% capacity. Renewables scramble. Solar wind, 12% global 2024 per IRENA, scale frantically, but intermittency bites without oil-lubed turbines. Transportation reinvents. Electrification accelerates. Tesla's gigafactories triple output on coal-mined lithium, but batteries need nickel shipped by. Sail. Windjammers return. Clipper ships haul 10% of bulk by year-end, echoing 19th century trade before oil. Agriculture starves. Fertilizer collapse. Global 200 million tons year, 90% nitrogen from natural gas, slashes yields 30%, as Ukraine 2022 grain shocks halved exports. Famine claims 100 million, worst since 1921 Russian crop failure amid civil war dearth. Economies bifurcate. Coal kings rise. India, 1,200 GW coal capacity grows 2% GDP while West contracts 20%. Australia's exports boom, $60 billion coal revenue 2024 doubles. Russia pivots Arctic gas to pipelines, sparing total ruin. Finance mutates, oil futures, obsolete. Bitcoin surges as energy hedge, miners flee to hydro-rich Quebec, Iceland. CBDCs launch en masse, China's digital yuan, already 40% retail 2024 dominates barter. Social order phrase, urban exodus, cities, oil-built sprawls empty 20%. Bike co-ops, rail revivals. U.S. freight rail, 40% of ton-miles pre-oil hits 80%. Violence peaks. Warlords control biofuel distilleries, Mad Max omens. Year's end. Inflation cools to 8% via price controls, but hyperstagflation lurks. 1970s oil shocks hit 14% U.S. CPI. New order emerges. Rationed, electrified, feral. Chapter 5. The Forged Equilibrium, Year 10. Decade in, the scars are continents. Global GDP recovers to 85% pre-zero levels but reshaped. Energy mix. Coal 45% up from 27%. Renewables 35%, solar farms blanket Sahara, wind corridors scour Patagonia. Nuclear 15%, 400 new reactors. China's AP1000s mass-produced. Biofuels 5%. Transportation. EVs 60% of vehicles, batteries cheapened 80% via scale as Moore's law hit lithium. High-speed rail webs nations. Hyperloop prototypes link Mumbai-Delhi. Aviation. Cargo drones and zeppelins. Passenger flight extinct save elite fusion jets. Food security stabilizes at 90% output. Vertical farms. Gene-edited crops. CRISPR wheat yields plus 50%. Hydroponics fed by nuclear desal. Population dips to 7.5 billion. Famines culling 1 billion. Geopolitics. Coal bloc India, Australia, Indonesia. Rivals Electrounion EU, US, Japan. China's Belt and Road electrifies Africa. Middle East, oil ghosts, fragments into theocracy and tech oases. Saudi's NEOM runs on imported solar. Economy. GDP per capita equalizes somewhat. Poor nations leapfrog via cheap panels. Inflation steady 3%. Currencies backed by kilowatt hours. Unemployment 8%, offset by maker economies. 3D printed homes from recycled plastics. But shadows linger. Coal smog chokes Beijing redux. Renewables rare earth wars flare in Congo. The equilibrium is iron, forged in forge fires of necessity. Chapter 6. The Legacy, Year 50. Half a century on, the zero-oil world endures. A grim colossus of human will and thermodynamic tyranny. Global GDP. 2.5x pre-zero, propelled by fusion dawn. ITER successors deliver 10 GW net by 2040s, per extrapolated IAEA roadmaps, powering unlimited desalination and synth fuels. Energy, fusion 60%, renewables 30%, fission remnants 10%. No oil ghosts, carbon captured retroactively, skies clearing to 300 ppm CO2. Society, megacities orbit fusion plants, arcologies house billions vertical and vast. Transport, maglev webs span continents, personal flight via drone taxis. Food, synth meat vats and algal blooms feed 10 billion, yields tripled. Economics, post-scarcity edges in, AI-orchestrated abundance, GDP metrics obsolete for energy throughput. Wealth gaps narrow, universal basic compute replaces fiat. Yet the foreboding legacy, humanity humbled. Wars over helium-3 scar lunar regolith. Biodiversity rebounds sans oil sprawl, but coal's black legacy mutates genomes. The zero taught, energy is empire. We built anew from ashes, but the dominoes echo warns, vanish one thread and the tapestry frays eternal.